Fahrenheit and Celsius done
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
Okay,
So it's about fun, and welcome to today's webinar entitled How Mobile Devices Are Changing the Way We Market to Today's Travel Shopper. My name is Darlene Rondeau, and I will be your moderator for today's event. My role at VFM Leonardo is as the Vice President Best Practices for our online merchandising group. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, we're going to be recording our webinar today, and at the conclusion of today's session, we'll be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to that recording, which you can share or listen to again at your leisure. You'll also have a questions dialog box in your GoToMeeting panel. As we move through our discussion today, please feel free to send in your questions and we'll address them throughout our webinar as well as at the end of today's presentation. We'll also be tweeting during our webinar today, so please feel free to join in the conversation at #VFMLWebinar. And you can also follow us at VFM Leonardo for regular updates on the latest trends in hotel marketing. Today, I'm very happy to welcome Jed Schneiderman, who is the president of TAP Networks. TAP Networks is Canada's top end-to-end mobile marketing solution, providing full-service creative in building apps, websites, and mobile landing pages. Jed also works as an advisor at Ryerson University's Digital Media Zone, connecting digital startup companies with larger organizations to help them accelerate their growth and ultimately achieve success. Jed has worked at Microsoft as the Senior Director of Marketing and at CTV Television as the Director of Strategy and Business Development for Digital Media. So welcome today, Jed. Very happy to have you with us.
Thanks so much.
Our second speaker today is Shannon Pratuch. Shannon is the owner and founder of the Scene Marketing Group, providing supportive and proactive public relations, marketing, event management, and consulting services to private businesses, associations, and nonprofit organizations in the Portland, Oregon area. Shannon is also responsible for the marketing activities at the Jupiter Hotel, which will be featured later in today's webinar. Shannon is an expert in social marketing, networking, PR, event planning, and visual media with over 13 years' experience. She's a board member of the Social Media Club in Portland. So before we begin our webinar today, what I'd like to do is check everybody's, and ask the audience what your top mobile marketing challenge is today. So I'm going to launch our poll, and you're going to have an opportunity to weigh in with your answers. So there's a polling dialog box that has come up. So the question is, what is your top mobile marketing challenge today? And you can choose between these answers: implementing mobile optimization strategies, things like budget, time, and resources, evaluating return on investment, or both. And I see that the audience is weighing in as we go here, and we have just a little over half of the folks have voted, so we'll give it another minute or so for everyone to weigh in. So it is looking like we have about 70% of the folks who have weighed in. And so far, it looks like implementing mobile optimization strategy is actually pretty tied with evaluating return on investment. And okay, let's close the poll. We have the majority of folks who have weighed in, and by and large, the audience has said that their biggest mobile challenge is actually both: implementing a mobile optimization strategy and evaluating return on investments. So thanks everybody for weighing in. Let me just review our agenda today. We're going to discuss traveler behavior relative to smartphones and tablets. We'll be talking about how consumers are using multiple screens, differences in how consumers are using apps versus mobile websites, what you're going to need for a smartphone and tablet optimized hotel website, and then we're going to share a specific example of how the Jupiter Hotel is successfully telling their story through mobile. So now I'd like to reintroduce Jed Schneiderman, President, TAP Networks. And Jed, I'm going to give you control of the keyboard and mouse so you can take it from here.
Great. Thank you very much. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone on the phone. It's great to be here. I think just with probably time being everyone's most precious resource, why don't we just dive right in to the presentation. Just trying to get the slides to advance, Darlene. And
yeah, there you go, Jed.
Super. So with the objectives already having been introduced by Darlene, what I thought I would try to do in the short time that we've got together is to really focus on the top three. I think Shannon's most probably going to do a phenomenal job talking about the work that they've done for a specific property. What I'd like to really talk about is some of these high-level themes in terms of how consumers are using the devices, the importance of both smartphones and tablets, and how you can think about either developing a site for mobile or optimizing for mobile, given that via the poll that was one of the key areas of interest. So specifically for my slides, what I'd love to cover off is why mobile marketing is so important, some of the habits and practices that we're noticing today, and some developing trends. Would also like to dive into specifically what consumers are doing on those devices, as well as really talk specifically to your category. So I've pulled up some specific stats related to travel, and what I've tried to do is to weave it back in a mobile context, and then just really develop a short list of things that hopefully you might be able to act upon tomorrow in your organization, be it if you're the chief decision maker or whether or not you're able to influence decisions in your organization. Hopefully some of what we cover off today is able to set you up for success. So this is a slide that has been circulating a little bit in the last couple of weeks, showing really the differences in terms of what's happened over the past many decades. I think what these two images reinforce is the importance of mobile from the following context. The device is touch activated, and so essentially consumers are really deciding what they do on the device and when they do certain activities. It's truly a lean forward experience where consumers are curating their own content and creating their own experiences. In North America, on average, the average consumer has about 60 apps on their smartphone and only tend to use about 5 to 7 on a regular basis. So I think it's important to understand, what people are doing on the phone, and context, I think, is an important part of that. We all know that the device is location aware, so I think for those gathered today for today's webinar, I think it's pretty important that you can target consumers based on location. And I think what you can also do is understand what activities people are performing on devices at the various locations. A recent study showed that a lot of mobile ad campaigns are now leveraging geofencing targeting. So in 2012, it was about 1/3 of all mobile marketing campaigns were leveraging location within their campaigns, and that's double from the previous year. Other things I think that are important to note is that mobile often offers a full screen experience, so unlike the desktop or the web, you typically have an opportunity to capture a person's full attention. And then you've got other robust functionality such as click to call, add to calendar, and conduct more broad-based searches, some of which I'll address as we go through the slides. The net takeaway is that mobile traffic is now accounting for 10% of all internet use. And the interesting part about that is that fewer than 1/3 of all websites are optimized for mobile. So, we'll joke about this later. Folks have always talked about this being the year of mobile. They've been talking about that for 8 years, and I think sort of we've actually finally arrived. So I thought what it might makes sense to do is sort of take a look at the landscape within mobile and just touch upon some of the important activities and some of the opportunities. Search is critically important to mobile, specifically within the travel category, and this is across both mobile and desktop. But within the travel category, my research indicated that consumers often will visit upwards of 12 to 17 different sites and actually conduct 4 different searches before making a booking. In the third quarter of last year, 16% of all clicks via search were done on mobile. So, I mentioned previously that 10% of all traffic is on mobile. In this case, 16% of all clicks within the travel category are directly from search. So the importance of being reachable and searchable and findable by consumers on search, I think, is going to be critical to your overall marketing strategy. I think what's also important is that video has seen dramatic growth, and I think that's an important part of helping you and your companies tell a story, and I'll touch upon that in a moment, as well as
Jed?
Yep.
Here's a question from Richard in our audience wanting to know, is there anything in particular that I would do to make mobile search, to make my hotel rise to the top of mobile search any differently than I would any other kind of search?
I'll be candid. We're not search experts, but having worked on Bing previously, I would tell you that from just a organic search ranking, it's not that much different from the traditional web. As far as search goes within the App Store, because that's an important, I realize that's an element within the question. So from an app perspective, both Android and iOS operate differently. I think for iOS, in fact, I know downloads of an app, so the vast quantity, are key to ensuring that your app is found. So, ensuring that you've got a lot of downloads on your app for iOS is important. Android tends to work a little bit more like Google search, where it's not just about the number of downloads, it's about the ratings for your app. So getting ratings for your app on Android is critical. I would say if your app has anything less than 3 stars, you're probably going to have an issue with discoverability. And then also ensuring that you have appropriate metadata within the Android store is critical as well, because that's also a way of influencing search within the App Store. So does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you, Jed.
So as we move to the next slide, just one of the things that I wanted to touch about, the importance of smartphones. There's feature phones, which are the traditional flip phones, and there's smartphones, which most people associate with Android and iPhones and Blackberries in some markets. In North America, smartphone penetration sits at about the 55 to 60% mark. I know that a lot of the carriers are about a year ahead of where their projections initially had them being. I think a lot of that is driven by the lower cost of the Android devices and just in some cases for some demos, specifically millennials, some of the cord cutting that's happening. But majority of the activity on smartphones is spent within apps. Thinking as to some questions that might come from the audience, there's always the debate of should I build an app or should I build a mobile optimized website. I don't think I'm necessarily going to settle the debate. I try not to prognosticate or sort of predict what's going to happen in the future. I think there's arguments to be made for both. I think what's important to know is that within smartphones, the majority of time is actually spent within apps. So really just sort of wanted to set that as context. I think another important element within the mobile landscape is the importance of videos. And it's not just that people are spending time on videos and sharing them with friends. It's actually impacting purchase decisions. So a recent survey said that over half of all consumers say that watching a product video actually makes them more confident in making a purchase decision. And I think what's also important is that if you can find the right content to produce, that content oftentimes gets shared. So as noted here, mobile video viewers actually share videos with other users quite often. And so there's also the viral component of videos, which is an important part of the mix.
Hey, Jed, we have a question from Ricardo in the audience. He wants to know, when you're talking about mobile, do you include both tablets and phones in that definition?
Yeah, you know what, that's a super question, and the answer is yes. I will talk a little bit towards the end of the presentation, some of the differences. It's been my experience that the behavior on tablets and phones is quite different. Certainly in certain markets, tablet tends to be a lean back experience. Consumption on tablets is oftentimes higher at home as opposed to, call it, on the road. And a lot of it is because, in markets where data plans are a little bit more expensive, one of the sort of working theories I have is even how much people can afford to spend on data plans. But a lot of the tablet consumption is at home. It's more lean back, whereas the smartphone behavior is typically for people on the go and people watching shorter form content. And I'll talk to that to some degree in terms of what are some of the features and functions that individuals are looking for on mobile, and I think it speaks a little bit more towards smartphone, smaller screen, on the go, and typically on the move.
Great.
Does that answer the question?
Yes, thanks, Jed.
Okay, super. So what do consumers want, and why does it all matter? I mean, there's a lot of buzz. I kind of have gone on record, and hopefully that doesn't come back to haunt me, that now is in fact the year of mobile. I think the point that I'm trying to drive home, and here are a handful of statistics, is that mobile really is now expected. It is something that consumers expect when they interact with your brand. And I think the reality is it's important not only to your existing customers, your loyal customers, it's also important to your prospects. And so I think what these data points really try to drive home is that a bad mobile experience is, in a sense, a bad experience with your brand. A lot of us probably on the phone, and even more broadly, the phone is an extension of ourselves. It's certainly the case for millennials. It is with us all the time. In some cases, we're probably checking it more often than we actually engage with humans in our immediate surrounding. And frankly, it's just become table stakes. What I'd like to sort of map out on the next couple of slides is, what do you do with that? In other words, where do you start? As a marketer, as a product marketer, it's always the challenge of where do you start? And, I know Shannon's going to talk a little bit to that, but you don't want to boil the ocean. So with that in mind, just again, some more context that not only do people want these sites, but there's actually a favorable impact on your business if you can do it. From a travel context, and I'll separate business versus leisure travels, but well over half of business travelers have said that they've used a mobile device to access travel information in the past year, and it's about 40% for leisure travelers. So the net takeaway is anywhere between 40 and 60%, if you want to call it an average of 50%, are using their mobile device in order to access travel information. One interesting data point I found was that in Germany, for travelers over 50, travel was actually the #2 most researched category on mobile devices. So from a travel perspective, and we'll get to some more data on this, mobile is a go-to platform for finding information. So I know when we asked the question at the top of the presentation about the poll, ROI was an important part of the mix. Just a quick slide in terms of how our company likes to think about mobile. It all starts with a strategy. I think it should start with the consumer. It should start with your audience. It's really trying to understand what it is that's going to differentiate your business. I think you then need to understand, based on defined consumer patterns or known consumer behavior. What exactly is at your site, be it on tablet or mobile or even on desktop, because I think as we've spoken to, consumers are probably looking at all the platforms, understanding what they want to do. What we tend to do is we tend to work with a lot of companies to optimize landing pages, and what that means is that much like you would do online, we're running A/B tests. We always want to learn based on having marketing messaging up front with consumers exactly what they're doing, and so we always recommend that if you can, and there are tools out there, if you can test more than one message, more than one offer, more than one call to action, so that you can understand and better measure ROI. I don't think there are any silver bullets. I think it's a lot of hard work. I think it's a lot of testing and iteration. Certainly, it's a lot of work that we do with a lot of the startups that we advise. It's just testing, testing, testing. And the more data you can collect, hopefully you can land on some insights that might help move your business forward. With that in mind, I'll just show you a couple of quick examples in terms of some opportunities out there for you to consider. Here's an example of a video pre-roll unit that's out there in the marketplace. We offer this as well. And what you can see is, given that we talked already to the importance of video, you can run mobile video pre-roll ads. And then what you can also do is you can leverage functionality that takes advantage of the phone. So there's advertisers that are leveraging quick one-click click-to-call, so you can route that to a call center or directly to your hotel. Depending on the context of your business, it could also be helping a consumer find you. And there's this notion that in lives today, we're all so busy, pulled in so many different directions, that you can leverage even something like add a reminder to your calendar. And this just, again, is trying to give you some ideas and thought starters as to what you could actually do to leverage mobile. Another quick example is there's a lot of opportunity out there to leverage location. And so, again, without being biased, we as a company offer location-based targeting. There's other ways in which you can do that. And then what we encourage companies to do is go in after the fact and really understand where the clicks came from, understand the demo profiles, and the idea being there is that you can get a better idea and close the loop on your marketing activity, what consumers are doing, and then if you can marry it up with offline data, i.e. your reservation data, your transaction data, and really understand if people converted, helps you better understand ROI. Darlene, how are we doing on time?
We're good, Jed.
Super. So what I thought I would do right now is, given the audience gathered today, is try to make this as relevant as possible for the audience. And so with that in mind, thought what I would quickly do is just go through what consumers are expecting on mobile, and then talk specifically to the travel category, and then move into some takeaways. So as I talked about, where do you start, you know, to the extent that you believe what I'm saying here today and that mobile is important, here are just some short data points to help you understand what it is that consumers are really looking for, and how you can start going after some important elements in terms of optimizing for the consumer. You're all consumers yourselves, and while your own experiences shouldn't necessarily govern what you do for your own business, I think a lot of this would probably make sense. It's really just about focusing on the user. They want easy buttons to find. They want one or two clicks. They're not going to spend a lot of time hunting through you know, a website. I remember in my past life when we worked on news content for feature phones, it took 17 clicks to get to a news story. No, there's no way, it shows how old I am, it's no way that any consumer would suffer through that today. They just really want to be able to find stuff. So layouts, in my opinion, probably much more important than sizzle. It's actually quite a great deal about just the functionality, and again, I think Shannon will talk to that to some degree, and they just want to be able to find information. There's a site out there that I've used and I recommend. I have no affiliation with it. It's called Duda Mobile, D-U-D-A. It's a great tool that if you don't have a mobile optimized website, allows you to quickly ingest your website. All you do is punch in your URL, and it actually shows you what your site looks like on a mobile device, which can be quite scary for some, but what it also allows you to do is quickly play around with a very easy interface. and help you almost configure what you think your website should look like. And it's amazing how even just that one little exercise forces clarity of thought, and you can show it with other people. You can ask your existing customers if you've got good relationship with them, show it to people in your office just to get multiple points of view. But that's just a quick example of taking action with some of this data. I showed
Jed,
you the ad. Yep.
Jed, Sarah in our audience, she would like you to repeat, what was that website called? Duda?
Yeah, Duda Mobile, D-U-D-A Mobile.
Okay, great. And one other question is, should your mobile website also have everything that your browser desktop website has?
So I'll do my best to answer that question because I don't have much context. My point of view in general, based on the majority of websites that I've seen, the ones that I've worked on, is no. I think typically there's a lot of information on your website that, given what we've just covered off so far, is I don't think it's necessarily that relevant. I think there's really good examples of, and what I would most probably recommend is, given what we've covered off, what you know about your business, what do you really think consumers need to find, and what do they want when they visit your website? I think a fallback option is always just to give them a link out to your full website. So start with a mobile optimized site, start with something that has less information on it, covers off some of the big things that we've talked about, which is probably your location, contact information, information about the rates and rooms, key things that travelers want to know, perhaps availability and location. And then if they want to go check out the full website, they can. There's lots of data, which I'll get into, that says people want to understand comments, they want to understand ratings and reviews. The reality is a lot of that most probably is not going to display well on a mobile phone.
And just to add to that, Jed, we have the same experience in that we provide hoteliers with a mobile optimized website as well as part of the license that they subscribe to. And as part of our guidance to them, we also say that, put the primary things that the consumer would be looking for, like visuals and accommodations and special offers. And then if they want more, if they want to see, and I know Steve in our audience was asking about floor plans, right? They don't really need to see that on a mobile device. That's true, Steve, they don't. So directing them to the desktop version is much more appropriate.
Yeah, and again, I mean, to me, mobile is really just part of the overall mix. I don't think it's necessarily going to solve all challenges that business owners and marketers face. And so I think if you think of mobile in the context of what you do on the web, what you do offline with CRM, newsletter strategies, social updates, all that sort of stuff, being active across multiple different travel sites. I think all that is important really when you figure out, and it's my bias is always thinking about the consumer or the purchaser. Think about their behaviors and the information that they're looking for as they go along and ultimately make a decision.
Excellent.
So just a couple things that we've talked about, again, to narrow down some of the sort of perspective to the last question is, this is what a lot of people are looking for when they come to your site. So I think it's important to provide this to them. I think now what I'd like to do is just get into some of the travel-specific stuff. I talked about this a little bit off the top. I think I'm going to go through this because I think ultimately the data speaks for itself. But, the first thing that I wanted to drive home is being optimized for search, because search does result in more business. We've talked a little bit about mobile is here. I think this also just reinforces the point of how many people are actually booking via a mobile device. Back to the question, smartphone versus tablet. This is smartphone. I think, again, context is important. You get stuck in an airport, weather causes a delay, you might have to actually book something, or there's a change of plans. The smartphone's more probably going to be in your hands than a tablet, although I think that is changing. with, as they call phablets, so devices that straddle in between the size of both a smartphone and a tablet. People are using smartphones, and it is part of what we talked about earlier, which is really understanding consumer behavior. And just to reinforce the point that from a transaction standpoint, it is important. So there's lots of data that says, people are booking via tablets and via smartphones. I do have some data that might help answer the previous question about tablets via smartphones. There's indication, for example, that for consumers 35 and over, they're actually doing, more research on tablets and more purchasing on smartphones. So again, for 35 and over, perhaps that's more indicative of the business travel, I'm not quite sure, but that would say that they're using the tablet more for research than they are for transaction. And then we actually take at younger consumers, they're actually buying equally on tablets and on smartphones. So that might help with the previous question that was asked.
And Jed, Nick wants to know, is the data you're sharing, is that North America or is it worldwide?
It tends to skew more North American. I did have some data from the UK on that same tablet versus smartphone stuff, but it's probably too granular to talk about. So a lot of it is tends to skew more towards North America.
Okay, we have a couple of more minutes, Jed.
Cool. So I've only got 2 more slides, so I'll try to be as efficient as possible. I think this is just an interesting story, and I apologize if the data is a little bit hard to see, but I think what's interesting about this is that from a time spent, what this shows is that travel is actually the second most sort of engaged category, and within smartphone traffic, it's actually accounting for 10% of all internet traffic. So again, just really trying to reinforce the point is that not only is it important on web, it's also important on smartphones. Some more data to support, again, slightly biased towards North America, but over half of Americans have said they actually have purchased a travel product on a tablet and 50% on smartphone. And again, what's really interesting is hotel booking is by far the #1 activity that people are doing on mobile. So higher than both air travel and ground transport, and even attractions and restaurants. So hotel is the #1 action that people are taking on. And basically just want to wrap it up with these key ideas. I think I've probably spoken to #1 at length. #2 is really just understanding what consumers are doing. I've tried to give you a head start in terms of thinking of the key activities that people want to do. And then I think it's just the growing importance of video, and so really understanding the role that that can play within your mix, assuming it's something you can afford to both produce and then ultimately market.
Great. Thanks very much, Jed. I think you've really nailed the essence of what hotel folks need to know about today's mobile environment at a strategic level. Now I'm really pleased to reintroduce Shannon Pratuch, who is the owner and founder of the Scene Marketing Group, and Shannon is responsible for all of the Jupiter Hotels marketing strategy and implementation. And Shannon is going to talk to us today about what she has done specifically at the Jupiter Hotels. So Shannon, I've given you control of the mouse and keyboard, and you can take it from here. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. It's nice to be here today. I'm looking forward to getting lots of questions. I love questions. So, yeah, the Jupiter Hotel, it's a property that's located in Portland. Darlene, I'm going to let you kind of move the slides, actually, so that way we can,
move it forward.
I just want to make this casual. Yeah. So on the next slide, actually, there's a little picture of the property. I just love this hotel. It's a mid-century motor inn hotel that was built in 1964, right in the heart of Portland, Oregon. So some of our challenges that the property have been, that it's been around for a little while, is just, finding different unique things to offer. And this slide really kind of shows what we're about. We've got 81 pet-friendly rooms. We've got lots of different event spaces. Sometimes people book out the entire property. We've got a restaurant and lounge called the Dunfer Lounge, and underneath the property we have a music venue and live shows and acts. Say there about usually about 7 days a week, and a lot of indie music acts. We also have a gallery on site, which is also our lobby, so it's open 365, 24/7. We've got underground parking and offer Portland experiences and lots of different amenities.
I guess underground parking is important given the weather up there, right?
Right. We've been very lucky this week. We've had lots of sunshine, but it does rain in Portland. So.
And Shannon, I bring that up because often I hear from hotels they have trouble figuring out what their story is, and so I think this is a good, featuring the fact that there is underground parking is very particular to your hotel and to your region. So for the hoteliers on the line, that's something to keep in mind as you're thinking about what's most important to your guests.
Yeah, telling our story has changed over the years. The story of the hotel when it first started, in fact, back in the early 60s, I've seen architectural sketches, and what was originally submitted to the property or to the city was a Hawaiian theme.
Yeah.
Which doesn't necessarily fit, there's in the colder Pacific Northwest. And now the slide that you're looking at is who we target and what we go after. So our guest demographics are ages 21 to 45. I tend to not try to steer away from the term hipster, but I think that picture there speaks to a lot more words. We've definitely international markets. We work also a lot up in Canada. A lot of artists, LGBT were tagged and IGLTA through creative corporate. We've got all sorts of different people that come there. Really, the property itself is very community oriented. We're very open to a lot of different guests and are willing to accommodate people to make the property suit their experiences and needs. We are very flexible with our rules and what our expectations are. And it's sometimes that story to tell our guests and really portray that and the brand story behind the hotel. How do you get that across, especially in mobile? What is that initial impression that we want to create? With this timeline here, this is kind of the backstory in regards to internally some of the efforts behind that. So the hotel in its current state, the Jupiter, opened up in 2004. So next year will be 10 years. In 2006, they began implementing email communications, and that was through their own internal systems. I began working with them in 2009. At that time, they had a defunct Facebook fan page. It had 25 fans. Front desk agent had started and had left, and they had no access to it. They weren't on Twitter or any other platforms. So we got them up and running. And 2010 was really a time for us to start looking at mobile for the property, incorporating video. In 2011, we really started switching everything over to being responsive, meaning that whether you were on your iPhone or a tablet, you had the correct formatting and the correct platform that you were viewing our sites on. We're also pretty heavy into microsites, So that way we have an LGBT blog, we have a site just for people that are bringing pets, things like that. And then last year we started publishing online brochures and expanding our digital media kit. And this year we've got some other fun things up our sleeves. So.
And I think, Shannon, this for everybody in the audience is a good story about, you know, just get it started, and then you can build on your successes. You can adopt new technologies as they come about. As in 2011, you determined that it was really important to have the mobile websites optimized for the devices that the consumer is using. So you want to make sure when they're on their phone they have a phone experience, and when they're on their tablet they have a tablet experience. So all of those things, I think, our guidance to the audience is, you know, get started. As Jed said, mobile is here. It's not coming. It is here. And get started, and then, you know, keep learning.
You're absolutely right. If anything, this slide really shows that it's a time investment. It's not going to happen overnight. If anything, it's taken us quite a few years to get started, tweak, learn from those experiences, make some adjustments, or maybe even improve upon the platform. What we initially launched in 2009 looks drastically different from today, and we continue to improve upon it. We don't expect the things that we're publishing now to be the same. Our guests change, our demographics change, our opportunities, and the brand continues to evolve. You know, some of the pros that we've had through this experience has been brand awareness. Of course, you know, our return guests and new customers. There's a direct ROI off of these efforts. Public relation opportunities. I think that's a big one. You know, sometimes we focus so much on sales, but by improving upon our mobile and all these digital platforms, we've had so many opportunities for media write-ups and articles that we probably wouldn't have through some of these efforts. Brand development and, of course, trend monitoring.
And Shannon, our audience is saying that they're having a little trouble hearing you. Can you get a little closer to your mic, please?
Sure, absolutely. Hopefully that one's a little bit better now.
I think a little louder.
A little bit louder, like that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And
perfect.
And Karen was asking, are we going to show any examples of best practice mobile sites? You have a picture here of your mobile website, but if you could just talk about your current mobile strategy within that, that would be great.
Sure. So right there you've got an image of our mobile site. I would definitely suggest everybody to jump online on their iPhone or tablet and poke around on our site. Our current mobile strategies really vary. You've got some of the, an overview right there on that slide as to what we are working on right now. So we've got of course, our website. We've got our mobile brochure, our social platforms, and we've got our publishing platforms. That's really, when I say publishing platforms, what I'm talking about is some of our microsites like WordPress and a few of the ones that I've referred to a little bit earlier there. Our social platforms, we mainly use Facebook and Twitter, and a lot of our efforts go into those two. And then, of course, we've got image platforms. We're working on our Pinterest site and building that out. We've had Flickr for quite some time. Digital communications are huge for us. We have multi-segmented and layered email communication systems. We do have our monthly email blast that goes out to a very large database, but we also have a number of different campaigns and different emails going out every month, really, depending upon what we've got going on. And then videos.
Shannon, could you speak up, please? We're still having trouble hearing you.
Okay. This will be a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that.
That's okay.
All right. So mobile is obviously important to us, which is why I'm on the phone today. And just a few little things there that I wanted to share about our brand story, search engine ranking, the ability for us to use as an example with DFM. When in the backside we have all of our keywords and SEO built into the backside of the site. Being able to control those things and implement those keywords really helps improve our search engine rankings for people to be able to find us. If they can't find us, then they're not going to be using our mobile sites. And honestly, that is such an important piece to this. Booking and making it easy to book online, the ability to use the tools. We've got a demographic that is heavily using their mobile, their iPhones and Samsungs, and to be able to find us and book us online. And our next slide will really demonstrate that for us coming up. So here's some fun stats for you guys. So the property has two websites. The first one's powered by TravelClick, and the other is a PMS system. We use that for our promotional campaigns, social rates, deals, for return guests and VIPs. Some little stats there for you. Comparing January 1st through April 20th of last year, we've already increased our mobile views by 33.57%. I'm sure if we went back a little bit farther, that number would be drastically larger, but that's just against last year. Our biggest increase in iPhone views is whopping 6,500% year over year, and Samsung phones as well. But those iPhones, people love them, and they're using them. They're using them on our site. And another interesting fact right there is that 72% of them are new viewers, and they're on that site for a little while, almost 2 minutes, which is a nice long time for them to be able to dig around it and get to know our property. So having really great imagery, making it as visual as possible is important for us.
And Shannon, there's a question from Michelle in our audience, and she wants to know how you're tracking this data.
Most of the data is on the backside of our site, and so we have the ability to be able to go in and view all those stats. The nice thing about it, too, is that we can also see where some of these links are coming in from outside of the property sites themselves, and see where some of that traffic is coming from. One of our top referring sites outside of our own is Facebook, which is good to see that our efforts on social are working well. And then, of course, our promo codes. If we're advertising outside of digital platforms, being able to track that through our promo codes allows us to be able to see where that's coming from. Our, those mobile strategies are all layered, and we talked a little bit earlier today about having, not putting all of our eggs in one basket, but having lots of different layers to our efforts. And, this, by having our different, publishing platforms, our mobile platforms, all these different channels that we're working on, we can see on the backside where that's coming from. And we're kind of keeping people within our little nest. We don't want them to leave us. Once they start looking around, we give them a lot of reasons to stick around and really unique and innovative content.
Can you expand a little bit on that? Because I know the audience, we always get this question, is how do you engage with your guests, whether it's on Facebook or Twitter? How do you keep them engaged with you?
Well, I'm awful lucky to be working with a property that has such a strong brand voice. We can be a little funky, we're a little fun, sarcastic, and somewhat sexy. When somebody walks into a room at the Jupiter Hotel, instead of mints on the pillow, we've got condoms. So we've got a little bit of a fun playfulness. We really pull that out, everything from our brand voice. We really have a lot of fun with some of our verbiage in our content and our fun with that. Some of our campaigns. One of the owners of the property had bought a mannequin for the lobby and to showcase some of the merchandise. And we have a lot of bands that stay at the property, of course, since we have a music venue. And I noticed that some of them were leaving swag behind, taking pictures with the mannequin. And the front desk had named her Lily. And so we put Lily online, and about a year and a half later, we were winning social media awards because Lily had a voice, and she was the mascot of the hotel. And I think that if you can really speak to your demographic and your audience and find a way to really connect with them, not just in regards to sales, but emotionally, people want to connect to your brand, and they like the brand because there's something about it internally that they're connecting to. And if you can hit that little hot button where that emotion speaks to them enough to make them want to put their pocketbook to that, then you've really made that strong connection from your brand to your customer.
That's excellent insight. Here's a question. Booking from a phone, does it really have to jump to your full site? I think, and Shannon, correct me if I'm wrong, within your mobile solution that you're using, you're integrated with a booking engine, right?
Yes, yeah. So when you're on our, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
When you're on our mobile sites, we have it optimized for your iPhone and also for tablet. And you can jump around and see that, the way that we have it integrated is off of multiple platforms. And so, we really enjoy using that. We also, we want our booking experience to be easy for our guests and our customers. And we've found that, through that, our numbers, our stats have really just gone up year over year. On that next slide on logistics and operations, these are just some pieces that I often get questions about, which are really important for us to address internally. Our team here works so closely together, operations, sales, and marketing. And part of the big focus is just staffing some of these efforts and setting budgets. I think that, collectively we work together to make sure that some of these campaigns and these marketing efforts go smoothly. But there's certainly key, people on staff that manage a good chunk of this. In regards to budget, some things to consider are graphic design. Just putting up these sites doesn't necessarily mean that, let's say on Facebook, that you need to make sure that your brand is consistent across. So as an example, your Facebook header and your avatar, graphic design for some of your mobile campaigns, website design, who's managing your content, who's writing your editorial. Just putting that to a front desk staff person doesn't necessarily mean that they're capable of doing that. Research and development time is a big piece for us, as well as development of strategy and campaigns. Monitoring the brand, and then PR crisis. Unfortunately, certain things happen, and having somebody on staff that is available for that and prepared. Those are all things that can impact the budget. And we talked about pros a little bit earlier in regards to, your brand awareness and having a direct ROI off of these things and public relation opportunities. Some things that I've seen on the back end side, however, are unrealistic expectations. Just being kind of grounded when you go through this process. It takes a little bit of time, and not expecting, that your sales are going to go through the roof, or that you can roll something like this out in 48 hours. Having too many channels, honestly, social and mobile, it's, a very sexy thing, and there's a lot of different things that you can also do, and there's different sites and different things that you can be a part of every single day. But if you spread yourself too thin, then you become, your efforts become weak and ineffective. not having enough support from operations and sales. I talked a little bit earlier about how amazing our team is and working with the property. Everybody on at the Jupiter Hotel is an amazing group, and they all work collectively together to support initiatives. Without having that support, I know that we wouldn't be nearly as effective. And so getting everybody on board and helping out is important. You certainly don't want inexperienced staff to be managing some of these things. And then the last two is lack of follow-through or lack of budget. Certainly be sensitive to the actual time and cost that it's going to take to do something like this. It's well worth it. It's absolutely 100% worth it, but just be patient with the process.
And then, and this is a question that came in from our audience wanting to know about geo-targeting offers. And this is your last bullet, Shannon, and Jed, chime in here if you have any guidance as well. But John wants to know, how do you ensure that your offers are geo-targeted to your local audience as opposed to, you know, everyone en masse? Shannon, you want to take a crack at that, or do you do geo-targeted offers, or are yours blanketed?
We've played around with you know, geo-targeted offers in the past. To a certain extent, we do have one that's running that's kind of behind the scenes a little bit. We don't have as many, like, let's say, digital geo-targeted offers, in part because we are very sensitive to holding to our ADR, and our occupancy rates are so high that we often are very limited in what our offers are. We really focus on our packages or our experiences. So the answer on my behalf for the property is probably a little unique just in regards to our availability and our positioning and how we set rate. But in overall, do we offer targeted offers to specific feeder markets? Absolutely. Are they always digital or mobile? Not necessarily. It just depends upon how we are quote-unquote playing with that particular market. We do have a lot of fun campaigns that we put out there. Portland is one of our major markets, so a lot of people do stay with us locally. And we have an after midnight rate, but we don't publicize it. So I'll let Jed kind of answer on behalf on a broader scale.
Jed, any comments?
Yeah, I mean, a couple simple things to keep in mind is one is context. So you can target your ads based on location. Most partners should be able to help you target at the postal code level, the zip code level. We're also able to go down to the latitude and longitude level, so down to a fairly granular level. But what you can do is, in addition to those two targeting capabilities, one is choose specific properties. So if you're trying to go after someone local, find a local partner, as in like publishing partner or website, in which you can market your offers that probably only locals would know about, as opposed to, let's say, tourists or business travelers. Another idea to consider is, and again, we work with partners, but we can also target individuals who've been to locations in the past. So if you know that an individual, or a phone, frankly, has been to a location multiple times, you might be able to conclude that they are, in fact, a local resident of the city, as opposed to someone who is coming through either for tourism purposes or business purposes. So if you start to compile those different elements, you're probably able to narrow down that you've got someone who lives in the city, and then you can serve them an offer.
Excellent. Thanks, Jed. And thanks very much, Shannon. It's always very valuable to hear hoteliers describe their own experiences. And I think you've done a great job today at telling the story of the Jupiter Hotel. What strikes me in a way that's really targeted to your guests. You really understand who your guests are, and then you're able to tell that story on all the mobile devices and social platforms. And I really love those stats. again, always insightful and certainly serves as further evidence that mobile is gaining a lot of traction. So one last poll before we close today. It's always great for us to understand how valuable the audience thought the content was. So everyone, you have a dialog box that has popped up. So the question is, did you think that today's content was valuable? So if you could please weigh in, that helps us in guiding future webinar content and knowing what you guys think is important. So almost 70% of the folks have voted, and by and large it looks like everyone thought thinks the content was valuable today. I'm going to share with you in just a couple of minutes some contact information for us, for Shannon, and for Jed. So most of the folks have voted, and again, thank you very much. The majority of you did agree that the content was valuable today, so we thank you very much for sharing your thoughts with us. And watch your inbox, because we'll be sending you a thank you for joining us email with a link to the recording of the webinar. There'll be a link to a free guide that we published talking about mobile optimization, and then there'll be invitations to some upcoming webinars as well. So here's the contact information. There's Jed's email. You can follow him on Twitter. You can log into the TAP Network's website, as well as there's a phone number. Shannon, thank you for sharing your contact information with us as well. We have a lot of comments that came in from folks asking to get in touch with you guys. So that will be important information that we can send out to everyone. Well, everyone, that's the top of the hour. Thank you so much for all your questions. Thank you very much, Jed Schneiderman from TAP Networks and Shannon Pratuch from Scene Marketing Group. We really appreciate your thoughts and your guidance to our audience today. Thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next webinar. Bye-bye.